In the northern reaches of Holodrum, between Tarm Ruins and Mount Kuko, rests the ruins of the Temple of Seasons, or at least the portion that had not fallen down into Subrosia. Using our newly acquired Rockscape and our ability to control the flow of the seasons themselves, we can explore the ruins in earnest, and find our way through this portal into the mountains of Subrosia. After setting off some, fireworks, we'll be able to make our way to this peculiar volcanic structure, which for some reason has eyes. This is, of course, the entrance to the next dungeon. Welcome to the Sword and Shield Maze, the only dungeon found in Subrosia. And right off the bat, I will say that this is a pretty solid dungeon. A great one even. Maybe not as cohesive as Explorer's Crypt or Unicorn's Cave, but a well thought out dungeon regardless. Is it a fire dungeon? Is it an ice dungeon? Yes, and also yes. The main gimmick of Sword and Shield Maze is navigating between two interconnected floors that are thematically opposites to each other, with the top floor, the shield, being pretty firmly ice-themed, slippery ice physics and all, while the bottom floor, the sword, fills the fire theme, with magma-filled pits and flame-powered enemies. The dungeon aesthetics, of course, are made to reflect this. The floor tiles upstairs use either stony cobblestone or thick sheets of ice, with frosted-over walls to match. Downstairs, meanwhile, has porous rocky walls and fine, ornate floor tiles to contrast this. Even the two side-scrolling sections stay on theme for the two floors they are found in. And of course, the dungeon shape of Sword and Shield Maze is, well, that of a sword and shield. Who would have thought? The color palettes are on point to match, of course, too. Even color theory plays a part in this, with orange being perceived as an aggressive color to represent the sword, where blue is a more calm one, which could be seen as a more defensive one, being the shield. All that is to say, yeah, visually, everything is pretty much perfect for what the dungeon's theme is. The dungeon music, meanwhile, is a little less perfect. I mean, on paper, I think it makes sense. I'm just not super into the execution here. The track essentially has two main sections that it alternates between. A dangerous low section, which I personally headcanon to represent the fire part of the dungeon. And a higher pitched section which has the ascending and descending sort of feeling, which I feel represents the dungeon's ice element. The first part is decent enough dungeon music. Nothing fantastic, but not terrible, just a pretty average dungeon theme. The second part, though, it actually irritates me. It's just too repetitive and high-pitched for my taste, and the fact that it repeats so often in one of the game's longest dungeons, no less. Needless to say, I got pretty tired of it pretty fast. Before anybody goes to defend it by reminding me that this is Game Boy music, I will remind you that this hardware has not stopped other dungeon themes from being bangers. Look at Face Shrine in Link's Awakening, or Dancing Dragon and Explorer's Crypt earlier in this game. I'm judging this piece with the fact that it is Game Boy music in mind already. This one just doesn't really do it for me. Like Explorer's Crypt before this, I would categorize the navigation of Sword and Shield Maze as a 3-act dungeon, with some pretty clean divisions. The first act spans the western portion of the dungeon, in which you'll make your initial trek through half of the first floor, and then make your way down to the basement. This is the most linear of the 3 acts by far. Act 2 is a more puzzle navigation style section, revolving mostly around the turnstile room in the southernmost chamber of Basement 1. This section will put your sense of space to the test as you manipulate and maneuver not just through and around the turnstile, but weave between the two floors back and forth in order to solve puzzles, get the dungeon item, and then take on the dungeon's mid-boss. We'll come back to this guy in a bit, but he's rad. The third and final act more or less combines the two playstyles of the previous two. There's some puzzles and linear exploration, which eventually loops in on itself and takes you into this complicated final set piece. This set piece utilizes the two interconnected floors idea and throws a twisting minecart labyrinth on top of that, which requires you to bring 4 magic ice crystals to set locations in order to cool the lava below. It's my favorite part of the dungeon, putting so many of the skills that the game has taught you to use, while also adding a brand new puzzle element to the mix, all the while still being perfectly suited to the dungeon's themes. So, between those 3 acts, what's the underlying idea, the thematic through line? I'd argue that it is spatial awareness and gaining an understanding of the interconnectivity between the dungeon's floors. If that sounds like the underlying idea of several dungeons that we've already covered here, well, I guess that's because it sort of is. However, Sword and Shield Maze examines this same concept through different means and different mechanics. The trampolines that I have very much adored seeing appear throughout some of the previous dungeons are not here, but that's okay because we don't risk overusing them. Instead, there are staircases connecting the top and bottom floor all over the place, and puzzles that will take you back and forth between them constantly. Most importantly, though, is the interplay between that and the 2 elemental themes here, which especially comes to fruition during the dungeon's final big set piece, as you can only change the conditions of the bottom floor by interacting with the puzzles on the top floor. It's all so meticulous in a way that I love.
Hello folks, my name is Nehru. My deep and abiding love for the Oracle games isn't exactly a secret, and I'm sure my choice to represent myself as a SUBROSIAN gives away my preference for Oracle of Seasons. Captain Bergerson has very graciously asked me to take part in his dungeon design series, and my choice of dungeon was clear from the very start. The Sword and Shield Maze. It's my favorite dungeon from my favorite top-down Zelda game, and I could talk about it endlessly. How much I love the Fire and Ice thematics, how masterfully it implements navigational complexity, how wonderfully designed many of the individual puzzle rooms are, but for the sake of brevity, I'll stick to glazing one aspect of this dungeon, which is actually contrary to a criticism held by many in regards to the Game Boy games. I truly appreciate how the Sword and Shield Maze requires the player to utilize a significant number of items. While most dungeons tend to stick to focusing around the dungeon item and maybe a secondary mainstay item like the hookshot in Ocarina of Time, the Sword and Shield dungeon keeps you on your toes. You'll use a bomb to clear the way for a magnet ball, which will require the magnetic gloves, only after using gale shots from your boomerang to clear away the hard hat beetles. In the next room, you'll use your magical boomerang to defeat the sparks, and later on you'll make liberal use of the Rock's Cape and Power Bracelet. While I often find that the final dungeon in a Zelda game often lacks any meaningful feeling of finality, that is very much not the case here. The Sword and Shield Maze truly feels as though it's asking the player to look at their inventory and think about how the different items can be used to get you through devious puzzles. I think that's fantastic. However, I do know this is an area in which many folks disagree with me. I'm certainly aware that many cite frequent item swapping as a point of contention in the Game Boy games. They argue that the limitations of the Game Boy being such that only 2 items can ever be equipped at a time, and considering you almost always want the sword equipped, means you really only have one single item equipped at a time. Go to a room that needs 3 different items, and you're pausing to swap items 3 different times. To many, this absolutely kills the pace. This is a very fair complaint. I simply favor ambition over convenience. There's no doubt that constant item switching is exhausting, same as dealing with the iron boots in N64 Ocarina of Time. For me though, there's no universe in which I would want to trade away that extra design depth for convenience. Ideally, we'll get a remaster or remake one day that'll allow the player to carry more items, like in the 2019 Link's Awakening remake, but even as is, with the severe limitations of the Game Boy, I'm happy to deal with the tedium. Thank you, Captain, for giving me the chance to come on here and talk about my favorite dungeon.
The dungeon item here is the Hyper Slingshot, which for the third dungeon in a row is an upgrade to an existing item. It's the slingshot again, but now it's hyper. That is to say, it shoots a spread of 3 projectiles rather than a single one, greatly improving its combat and puzzle utility. There's only a couple of puzzles in here that use it, including an optional one pretty close to the start of the dungeon that you can backtrack for, in which you need to strike multiple targets simultaneously. That's about it. I do think this item is cool, but it feels a little underutilized and isn't anywhere near as fun as something like the magnetic glove or utterly game-changing as the Rocks Cape, which fundamentally changes how you interact with the entire rest of the game. Then again, saying this item isn't quite as cool as 2 of the most novel and fun items in the series is hardly a fair critique, so it's alright. It will come in handy during the dungeon's mid-boss, however. This guy is called Fry-Polar, which is a pun that works on multiple levels, since he's a dual elemental style mid-boss. Fry like hot, but polar like cold, but also polar like polar opposites. This mid-boss battle is a pretty fun one that is perfectly on theme with this dungeon. Fry-Polar swaps between a fire and ice state, with elemental attacks to accompany them. When he's ablaze, you can use mystery seeds to force him to switch to his ice state, and then in turn deal damage using your ember seeds. When he switches back to his fire state, you can hurl the ice shards that he dropped in his other form back at him to deal damage that way. Just make sure to hit those with mystery seeds too before you do. Overall, I love this fight, and for a Game Boy Color sprite, I think he looks pretty good too. Plus, the fire and ice dual elemental battle is a trope that I frankly never get tired of. The only issue I have here is that the pacing of the battle is somewhat throttled by the game's inventory management system, but I guess I did say that I wasn't going to complain about inventory management anymore, didn't I? Still, it's a case of ambitious design on limited hardware, and I can't help but admire that. Overall, Seasons has had some pretty hit or miss mid-bosses, but this one is definitely among the better ones. With all of that said, once we've found the boss key from the Eastern Wings stretch of floor 1 and successfully cooled the magma flooding the central chambers of the basement, we can confront the dungeon boss. Appearing in front of us is Medusa Head. Alright, bit on the nose, but I see why they named you that. Medusa Head is a visually striking enemy for sure. This is such a detailed and angry looking sprite. They did a great job on the aesthetics here. Medusa Head will also employ the tried and true tactic of flying around the room and hurling projectiles at you. Mostly, these are fireballs it spits out, but it occasionally will use these blue energy orbs to petrify you, Medusa style. Thankfully, it's only temporary. My favorite of their attacks is when they unleash these huge lasers and sweep across the room like this, which you can use the Rocks Cape to leap over. It's so satisfying to avoid successfully. The slingshot can be used to momentarily stun them too, but I found it most effective to just have at it with my sword, especially if you're good at timing your spin attacks. The only issue I have with this fight is how absurdly easy it is. It feels like a massive step down in difficulty compared to both Manhandla and Gleeok, which is a shame since this is one of the only original bosses in this game, rather than being a reused or adapted one from a previous Zelda game. The concept, I think, is solid. It's just that Medusa Head dies so fast. Granted, I do have both the level 2 sword and a red ring, so that contributes for sure, but still, once you have their attack patterns figured out, it's honestly really easy to just avoid taking hits, whether that be by avoiding their attacks with the cape or by blocking them with your shield, which by the way, if you get petrified while holding your shield out, it still works to passively block their attacks, which is just funny. It's too bad though, I think there was a lot of potential here with this battle, but unfortunately, it strikes me as a bit underwhelming compared to how fun most of the previous fights have been. It's not like it's anglerfish levels of easy, and I do think it's still pretty fun to do, but I'd also rank it lower than most of the other bosses that this game has served up, and I kind of think Fripolar may have made for a better dungeon boss than mid-boss, but oh well. Once they're defeated, we'll find the changing seasons, the final essence of nature.
Nehru here, Subrosian real estate mogul, and let me ask you one simple question. Are you tired of the sun? Wish you could go outside and enjoy the day without those dang UV rays melting your skin? Tired of that ugly terminant moon staring you down every time you step outside? Do I have the solution for you? Move underground. Welcome to Subrosia, a veritable paradise. There is an endless list of reasons why Subrosia should be the destination for your next vacation, or the permanent home for you to raise a family. For starters, while the world above might be changing seasons every time that green guy swings his rod, it's always the same in Subrosia, extremely hot. There's also lots to do. Dance the night away, dig for ore on the beach, meet the locals, maybe even find love. And of course, relax in our lava hot tubs. And I'm happy to tell you that I have a very exciting piece of property that just came on the market. Welcome to the Sword and Shield Maze. Have you ever wanted to be freezing cold and boiling hot at the exact same time? Don't you love the idea of having to navigate a confusing central turnabout every time you want to get around? This is the perfect piece of property for you, and I'll offer it to you for the low price of one boxed copy of Wand of Gamelon still in plastic.
So, overall, this is a very good dungeon, one of the best in the game. It pretty much perfectly performs that balancing act of iterating upon and evolving old ideas while still introducing new ones. We've got minecarts, treasure chest teases, verticality and spatial awareness puzzles, turnstiles, the works. All familiar elements that get remixed in fun ways here. Plus this whole mechanic of transporting ice to cool magma, which is not something we've seen in this game before. Iteration and innovation rolled into one. The two themes, fire and ice respectively, also feels like a nod to the game at large. Subrosia being Holodrum's lava-filled basement. The dungeon is capped off with the changing seasons themselves being the essence that we recover, the embodiment of the never-ending cycle of nature, changing from winter to spring to summer to fall, and then back to winter endlessly. It's a perfect fit for this dungeon, which has you frequently moving between distinct climates. Worth a mention that this is also the only dungeon in Subrosia instead of the surface world of Holodrum. A few more notes I have. There's a lone pot here in an initially inaccessible part of this room on the west side of floor 1. Later on in the dungeon, we can bomb a wall on the other side to reach here and find a fairy. Fairies are great and all, but for such a well-hidden secret, man is this underwhelming. I would have rather at least have found a ring here. There's a puzzle in the room where we find the dungeon item, which took me way too long to work through. The intended solution is to use the magnetic glove to manipulate this orb from the closed-off section on the south side of the room, move it over to this switch, which extends the bridge so that you can get over there. However, I was pretty sure that you could just squeeze past here if you were careful enough. In fact, I even did so when I streamed the game back in 2024. For whatever reason, I just could not replicate it this time despite trying repeatedly. Either way, I like the idea of needing to approach a puzzle quite literally from multiple angles, so this is not me trashing the puzzle. There's also this little memory puzzle in which you'll see a ghostly Armos move along a set path in this room, which you'll need to replicate. Your path through here has to match exactly, so be careful you don't get knocked off course by any enemies. It's a neat concept, but not my favorite, I guess. It feels a little out of place, but not too terribly so as to detract from the overall dungeon experience. But it's just a one-off thing, which is probably for the better. There's also this sliding ice block puzzle, and I can already hear the comment section complaining about how much they hate it. Well, here's my spicy hot take. I love this sliding ice block puzzle. I've always loved puzzles of this nature, from the Ice Cavern to Snow Peak Ruins. These are always so fun for me. Once you understand the mechanics of how multiple blocks can interact with each other and how to map the paths out in your head, things can really start clicking into place. It's always so satisfying. In this particular case, you need to get all 3 blocks into this nook on the right side of the room. This is one of the best versions of this puzzle we've gotten in the entire series, with the block puzzles from Twilight Princess maybe just narrowly beating it out, but I'm not sure. On the flip side, this icy side-scrolling section feels like it was designed specifically to torture me personally. The setback of slipping down here should be enough, but then they gotta punish you more with blade traps. It's just cruel. Speaking of side-scrolling sections, I will say as far as criticisms go that I do wish that the dungeon had been laid out a little differently, because there are definitely some compromises made to the progression in order to maintain that sword and shield shape, with more disjointed sections than we've seen in the likes of Explorer's Crypt. It's not in a way that is severe enough to hinder my enjoyment of the dungeon, but it is still there to a small degree. But overall, Sword and Shield Maze is a great dungeon. It's multifaceted with its theming, but not in an incoherent way. It all fits together. There's a great sense of escalation with what the game has previously established, but without sacrificing being novel on its own terms. It's full of great little teases. It has a turnstile, a great mid-boss, and memorable set pieces. All the makings of a great dungeon. Done it. We've found all 8 essences of nature, which has allowed the Maku tree to grow a powerful seed, which he in turn gifts to us. With this seed, we can pierce through the dark magic protecting Onyx's castle and approach the end game. So, spoilers ahead, and let's get into it. The castle itself is nothing incredible. In fact, here's the entire dungeon map. It spans all of 8 rooms, boss arena included. These 2 side chambers are optional rooms to grab a fairy, and there are no real puzzles to be had here. Instead, you're just pushing through rooms filled with enemies. This includes Wizrobes, Darknuts, some Wallmasters, and even a quick reappearance of Facade, who dies as easily as you remember. As much as I would have liked for more here, it doesn't really need to be more than this. It acts as a dramatic build-up towards the boss, and that's all it is trying to be, and it does achieve that well. Without any unique puzzle mechanics of its own to lean on, drawing out the castle more than this may cause it to somewhat overstay its welcome, so it works. The aesthetics here do the trick too. I like the bricks, the very man-made feeling, and these swords on the wall look rad. The music is pretty much perfect here too. It's sort of mysterious and tense without being all that bombastic or over the top, restraining itself, saving the energy for when we actually confront Onyx, and confront him we will. Onyx is a great final boss, a giant armored absolute unit of an opponent. This guy is like the ball and chain soldiers cranked up to 11. He looks great. His sprite is detailed enough, but his character art really sells me on this guy. He reminds me a lot of the N64 depictions of Iron Knuckles, a favorite enemy of mine. He's physically imposing, just a big guy. Even the sound of his footsteps portrays just how heavy and strong he is. There's 3 phases to the fight itself. The first and easiest one requires you to avoid his attacks and smack him around with your own spin attacks. Anything less will deal no damage. Simple enough though. The second phase is more of the same, except he will also use Din, still trapped in that crystal from the start of the game, as a human shield. That's pretty cruel, man. You've got to avoid hitting her, as that will actually deal the damage back to you. Easiest way to go about that is to use the Rod of Sea Seasons itself to knock her crystal out of the way so that you can get close enough to Onyx to hit him. Good stuff, if not a bit obtuse. The third phase is my favorite. You'll get a short psych out moment where you think you've won, only for the floor to collapse beneath you and drop you into the arena below. Here, in the dark, Onyx will reveal his true form, a colossal dark dragon, and he looks awesome. You almost forget that this is a Game Boy Color sprite. He looks so good. As a quick side note, this is also the only phase of the battle that uses its own unique battle music. Well, sort of unique. It has an equivalent appearance in Oracle of Ages as well, but I digress. In terms of just this game, it is unique. The first two phases used the usual boss theme, but this one gives us something a little different, and I like it a lot. It's not the most incredible piece of battle music, but it's a welcome change of pace after getting the same boss theme 9 times in a row. As a dragon, Onyx will attack by shooting fire at you, as one would expect, as well as by using his massive claws. You've got to avoid these attacks, stay alive, then when he slams one of his hands down, you can jump on top of it to use as a platform and reach the big gem weak spot on his forehead. In premise, pretty simple, but this fight is less about figuring out the weak point and more about doing, about trusting your reflexes and acting quickly. I recommend coming in with a potion ready, as there's a good chance of him depleting your hearts. Some of these attacks are just so tricky to avoid, so if you want to come out the victor, you must manage your timing and strike when the opportunity presents itself. Man, what a great fight. I am quite fond of this one. It manages to achieve being a fairly challenging final boss, as well as a big climactic spectacle at the same time. Plus, who doesn't love to fight a dragon? With enough hits to the face, eventually Onyx will go down. Din will be freed, and with the Oracle back, the Seasons of Holodrum will be stabilized. So, this is a wrap on the dungeons of Oracle of Seasons. What a great finale, and what a charming little adventure this has been. I went into this series with a small bit of bias. Seasons is one half of a duology, and while I have always liked it, I always had a preference towards the puzzle-focused Oracle of Ages, but after giving this game a thorough examination, it has only made me love it more. This game is nothing short of an excellent Zelda title, one that tests your reflexes and understanding of space, as well as puts your sense of exploration and curiosity to use. It has been an absolute pleasure to put under the microscope. The more I look at it, the more I appreciate it and what it could achieve. That said, despite the fact that we saved Holodrum, the plans of Twinrova are already in motion, the flame of destruction already lit. So, with the dungeons of Oracle of Seasons concluded, we must venture to the land of Labrina to examine the dungeon design of Oracle of Ages. Until then, thank you so much for watching. A quick shout out to my friend Nehru for joining me in this video to talk about Sword and Shield Maze. An additional thanks to Wolflink's Shadow for producing several pieces of music for me, including the cover of Tarm Ruins, Dancing Dragon Dungeon, the boss battle theme, and some as of yet unveiled pieces that you'll hear in my videos about Oracle of Ages. Go check the links in the description to find their channels for more great Zelda content. Finally, of course, special thanks goes out to my channel members here on YouTube, as well as my supporters on Patreon, the names of which have been scrolling by on screen. You all are awesome. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye.